From A&E, this is Biography. For December 1st, 1999, Biography with Harry Smith.
Think of the famous pitchmen you've watched over the years selling their wares on television. Fictional, like Mr. Whipple and the Maytag Repairmen, or real, like Orville Redenbacher and Frank Perdue. But guess who the Guinness Book of Records says has appeared in more commercials than anyone, ever? Dave Thomas. The man who founded Wendy's and built it from a single burger joint into a multi-billion-dollar corporation has made more than 650 TV spots.
Our hamburgers are the best in the business, or I wouldn't name the place after my daughter.
Even though all those ads have in fact helped sales at Wendy's, no one, least of all Dave himself, would ever call him a professional performer. As he puts it, the only reason he's made so many is because he couldn't get one right. As it turns out, the Dave Thomas story is a lot more exciting than his acting style. And the drama began long before he stood in front of a camera, or even a hamburger grill.
I'm Dave Thomas. I started Wendy's with one restaurant and a philosophy.
When you have nothing when you're growing up, then you have to dream harder.
He just really wanted a good hamburger.
Hey, where's the meat?
I like mustard, pickle, and onion. You might dislike lettuce in the meal.
We should call the order.
Well, I just thought he was this taskmaster.
Give it to me again, that word.
Well, he is kind of like that country bumpkin that has problems saying words.
Mucho got.
He's always 3 deals ahead of everybody else.
It's a great American story of hard work.
Making money is really a lot of fun. Hi, I'm Dave Thomas.
The saga of Dave Thomas's life would someday be told as an Horatio Alger story, but his early years were straight out of Charles Dickens. The Great Depression was in its 3rd year in 1932. A hamburger cost 5 cents, and working people were grateful when they could afford one. 13 million Americans were unemployed, and many more millions moved in and out of poverty. David Thomas was born in Atlantic City, July 2nd, 1932. His parents were not married, and in those days, being born out of wedlock carried a terrible stigma that would plague Dave Thomas for years. Rex and Aluba Thomas adopted baby Dave when he was 6 weeks old, and they moved to the Midwest where his dad followed construction work as a steam fitter. When Dave was just 5 years old, his adoptive mother, Aluba, died, and he was at the daily mercy of his rough and tumble father.
He was real strict with David. He was just real strict with him. And David knew to mind him because he knew what kind of whippings he would get if he didn't.
Dave's father, Rex, would go on to another 3 wives, but between marriages, he and his adopted son would eat every meal in restaurants.
I don't think they was close because I don't think anybody could have been really close to Rex. But he took care of David. He saw that he had clothes and food, but a loving man, loving parent, he wasn't.
The most popular place in every American town is the corner drugstore.
Dave learned about good food and happy families in the local eateries, lessons he would remember for the rest of his life. In 1944, with the Second World War grinding on, Dave and Rex moved to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where Rex got work on the atomic bomb project.
At Oak Ridge, Tennessee, are 2 of the giant plants where the atomic bomb is produced.
There, 12-year-old Dave did what he could to contribute to the family. He had jobs in a drugstore and a grocery, but was a little hard to handle and got fired at both. Desperate and determined to show his father he could make it, he walked into the Regas family restaurant in Knoxville, ready to start his real career.
When he came to get a job at Regas, he had gotten fired at Walgreens for some reason. He walked a few blocks down the street to Regas to get a job. And he said he fibbed about his age. He said he was 16, but he was only 12.
He worked the night shift from 7 in the evening till maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't know when he went to school, but he had to work hard just to stay even.
On the night shift, Dave would make several hundred sandwiches, then serve breakfast to the men on their way to work. He was not yet a teenager and was already holding down a full-time job.
His dad one time said, well, you'll never be able to hold a job. And most of the time, negative motivation doesn't work too well, but I think David took this as a challenge. He said, I'm going to show my dad, you know, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to do well, and I'm going to make good money, and I'm going to be successful.
Dave got support and encouragement from his adoptive grandmother, Minnie. She is the one who told him he was adopted. But Dave didn't waste much time looking back. He had, by now, adopted the Reguses, and he shared his teenage dream with them.
He would say, you know, one of these days I'm going to have a chain of restaurants. And he had a vision of what he wanted to do. And, of course, his fellow workers then would tease him, you know, yeah, Dave, go ahead and tell us about your chain of restaurants, when he was working and didn't have any money.
Dave had to put his plans on hold to cope with his day-to-day life. In 1947, Rex moved his new wife and stepdaughters and Dave into a trailer with no plumbing in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
We had a small middle bedroom, and then David, he slept on the couch. He didn't have a bedroom of his own.
When the family moved yet again, Dave stayed behind in Fort Wayne. He was just 15 years old, but he quit high school that year. While other kids were playing games and going on dates, Dave was focused on simple survival. He moved into the YMCA and got a job as a busboy at the Hobby House restaurant just down the street. There, he came under the spell of the owner, Phil Klaus, and the whole Klaus clan, and they came under the spell of Dave Thomas.
He was just a young kid, and he had living in a room over at the Y, and he came in several times to see my dad and told him that he'd really like to work for him at his restaurant, because someday he intended to have his own restaurant. And he would start at the bottom, he would wash dishes, be a busboy. He wanted to learn every job in the restaurant. And my dad got a kick out of that a young man with that kind of an attitude, and instead of how much do I make and what time do I get off, here was this kid that really wanted to learn and really work for him.
Dave Thomas was about to create another family for himself, and once again he'd cast the people he worked with as family members. Phil Klaus became a surrogate father, and Phil's son Rich and stepson Wayne became like brothers for Dave. He even rented a room and moved in with their aunt.
He told him, he says, well, why don't you go to my sister's and see if she has an extra room. So that's what I did, and he was glad to get in. He was glad to get in a family atmosphere. And I always said David was like our oldest son.
He wasted no time making an impression.
Dave was willing to work extra. He was willing to stay if there was something needed done. He liked to have projects and would take and develop or work on an idea. We had a donut machine at one time and made a sugar cookie and on marketing ideas and how to sell them. And he had a lot of ideas always.
Dave put in a good, hard run at the Hobby House. Then, in 1950, at the age of 18, his Uncle Sam beckoned and Dave joined the Army. The Korean War was underway, but Dave was sent in the opposite direction, to Germany, as part of the Army of Occupation. He went through cook school, then was a failure as a baker.
He really had to know how to use them ovens, and I didn't know how to use them. And it was called Cake Disaster. I had about 40 sheet pans of cakes that was strictly raw in the middle. I mean, it was a nightmare. And I thought, well, I got to do something to get out of this.
Dave took everyone's mind off his cooking by painting the mess hall. Then he was a huge success running an enlisted man's club. He expanded the menu, improved the food, and made it fun to come to Dave's place. Tricks he would resort to many times in the future. Dave returned to Fort Wayne confident and cocky in 1953. But there, he was about to meet his match.
We used to fight, because he used to try to tell me how to be a waitress. And I told him he had to learn to be a cook. He was a short order cook. He used to call himself a chef, but he was a short order cook, and I was a waitress. And he thought I didn't serve fast enough, so we used to tangle.
Pretty soon, Lorraine enjoyed special status with Dave Thomas, who served as guardian and chauffeur to the restaurant staffers.
It would be like 1 o'clock by the time we cleaned up and got out of there. So he used to drive us all home. And I started being the last one on the list that he would drop off. We used to go out for sandwich or coffee or something after work and just talk and get to know each other.
Dave and Lorraine were married within a year from their first meeting. They quickly set about creating the family that Dave had never known himself. But in starting a family of his own, Dave and Lorraine had to overcome harsh economic realities. They were barely making ends meet on his $125 a week salary. And although he was a star at work in the Hobby House restaurant, Dave was in line behind a lot of relatives, and the prospects for advancement weren't what he needed. And Dave Thomas, short order cook and counterman, had already learned from Phil Klaus a business philosophy that would serve him all the way to the top.
My dad always said that maybe the food business was not the easiest business, but I think both he and David would subscribe that cooking good food for people and setting a wonderful meal in front of you is an act of love, and these were loving people.
The food business was about to add another member to Dave's extended family.
Howdy, everyone. How are you?
This man would ride into town in a white Cadillac and wearing a white suit. He'd eventually make Dave Thomas a multimillionaire.
Is that sun hot this morning?
Biography's look at Dave Thomas will continue in a moment here on A&E.
The GMC Convoy 2000 is here. Trucks with capabilities that will change the way you look at the road. Professional-grade pickups, SUVs, and family vans designed better than they need to be, like the incredibly smooth-riding 2000 GMC Jimmy, an SUV with a full-length steel frame, its backbone. Now get $2,000 cash back when you purchase select 2000 Jimmy models. GMC. Do one thing, do it well.
Welcome to the home of the co-op of growers who make Florida's natural premium orange juice. They own the land, the trees, and the company, so they know the secret to making great juice is to do nothing. Nothing to compromise the orange's natural sweetness. Nothing to rush the ripening process. And while this may not make for much excitement around town, not yet, it does make for one great tasting orange juice. Florida's natural. Taste the difference.
Honey, I'm going to Staples to pick up a few gifts. Be back soon.
Attention, shoppers. Looking for the perfect gift? Well, check out aisle 3 for great prices on Sharp mobile organizers. And save on Panasonic phones. No, not you! You! Yes. And I, or any husband, would love one of those nice global chairs. I need a leather one. Get a leather chair!
For great gift ideas and over 7,000 items at guaranteed low prices at Staples. Yeah, we've got that.
If you're game, Biography's got a week of prize-winning personalities, like Vanna White.
She is the human Barbie doll.
And how Bob Barker gets his kicks.
Karate has made a real difference in my life.
Plus Regis, Monty, and Merv. The real lives of TV's greatest game show personalities. Game Show Week, hosted by Alex Trebek. All next week at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific on A&E.
For sinus sufferers, it can start with a twinge or perhaps a slight pressure. For everyone, there's a signal. Your sinuses are gonna be trouble. Don't let it happen. Take Sudafed at the first sign. Untreated sinus pressure can escalate to pain. But now, taking Sudafed at the first sign releases pressure, so symptoms don't get worse.
The first sign of pressure, that's my signal.
Stop sinus pain before it starts. Take non-drowsy Sudafed at the first sign.
You are watching Dave Thomas on Biography.
The parade of new cars starts across the stage among the dancing motorettes.
America in the mid-1950s was a country on the move.
The new Chevrolet Bel Air.
People bought cars and looked for new things to do in them. One thing was eating, another was going somewhere to eat. Dave Thomas was already a veteran of the food business at age 22 in 1954. He'd worked his way up to manager of the Hobby House restaurant in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and was eager to put his own stamp on the business.
Dave loved to promote. And we would have people lined out the door and twice as busy, and we'd have to cook, 10 times more chicken, go as fast as you could all day.
At the hobby house, they made chicken so good, people would ask if they could buy some extra to bring home. Takeout. This was a revolutionary concept at the time, and it got so big they had to build a separate premises just for the takeout. While Dave Thomas was helping to reinvent the food business, he and Lorraine produced 4 children in 6 years. The problem was, Dave seemed to have more of a knack for restaurants than he did for kids.
I remember living in Fort Wayne and my dad working the hobby house and coming home and with these black shoes that were just grease. Because he worked as a cook or whatever, and so I remember going there for dinner because my dad would be there. That's the only time we ever saw him.
Dave didn't know it yet, but he was on a collision course with a man named Harlan Sanders who called himself Colonel. Sanders was 65 years old with a chicken place in Corbin, Kentucky that had just been bypassed by the interstate.
I had a reputation of having the best food between Cincinnati and Atlanta, Georgia, so I enjoyed a fine business. Well, all at once the highway situation got to changing, so they changed the junction from in front of my place here to downtown.
Now the Colonel hit the road and tried to get people to use his method and recipe for chicken, then pay him a 5-cent royalty on every chicken they sold. He was helping create the fast food franchise business. One day, he stopped by the hobby house.
He had this old white Cadillac, and here's this guy supposed to be a Kentucky colonel, and he had these white suits, and he had a cane and white hair, and he'd come into town and he'd ask who ran a real good restaurant.
Dave Thomas was running a good restaurant for the Klaus family and didn't see any reason to pay the Colonel for what they were already doing well. But the Colonel charmed his way into the Thomas's life.
He was a funny man. He used to cuss like a stevedore. We were with him one time, he got so mad in the restaurant, he went back in the kitchen, they chased him out. But, I mean, he had a temper, but he was he was always nice to me. He was kind of a strange man. He used to take his wife and his ex-wife to the conventions. Now, how about them apples?
Colonel Sanders cooked his chicken in pressure cookers in less than 1/3 the time it took conventional frying, but that was only the start. Dave wanted to soak up all he could about making it in the restaurant business from the Colonel. The master salesman had found his prized pupil.
I was always inquisitive. It's always fascinated me to find out when people are successful, how do they become successful? What does it take to do it?
Dave Thomas and Colonel Sanders were a match made in heaven. The Colonel had the image, and Dave knew how to promote it.
I told the Colonel, why don't we put your mug on the car? He was driving a white T-Bird. And I said, why don't we put your mug on the Thunderbird? Oh, he says, that'd be too ostentatious. Next sentence, when can we get that done?
Dave would have a hand in developing the buckets and spinning signs that made the Colonel's kindly smile hard to get away from. In 1962, the Colonel and Phil Klaus, Dave's boss, had 4 Kentucky Fried Chicken stores in Columbus, Ohio that were failing, and they were looking for someone to throw with the problem.
My dad made him the offer and talked him into moving to Columbus, Ohio with his family and taking over these businesses that weren't doing that well. He went over there and he started merchandising and running 2-for-1s, and all the things that he had learned here he'd put to use, and he turned it around in short order.
Dave Thomas was finally out on his own and running his own show. It should have been fun.
No, he wasn't having fun. No, he wasn't doing much of anything except going to the stores and, and working. And it was work. I mean, back then, it wasn't just mental, it was physical labor. He was cooking. I mean, he'd come home at night smelling like grease. Fried chicken and grease. No, there was no party time.
I can remember days where he'd go into a KFC store and the product wasn't right, and he would grab the tray and throw it right in the garbage and tell the manager, start all over and do it right. If you can't do it right, don't do it at all.
Beneath the cheerful exterior and the engaging smile beat the heart of a fast food warrior.
He really didn't want anyone else to be selling chicken in Columbus, Ohio, other than Kentucky Fried Chicken. He really believed we had the best product and that we ought to have all the sales. And so there were probably 2 other competitors at the time, and I remember Dave being absolutely ecstatic when one of them went out of business in this town. And to see boards on their windows, Dave came and said that we had been successful.
Dave Thomas was building a business, but it was coming at the expense of family and personal life. The man who had never had anything believed hard work could solve all problems.
He was a man that didn't know how to play. He did not know how to enjoy life like a lot of people do, like with their family, like going out to the beach and doing things like that. He didn't know how to do that kind of stuff. He knew how to work. And work was where he got his kudos.
And work was great. The chicken was going out, and the praise and the money were coming in just as fast. 20 years after leaving home to work round the clock, Dave Thomas was an overnight success. Now, with a chance to make a fortune, he sold his stores back to Kentucky Fried Chicken in 1967 and made several $1 million. His new financial independence would let him provide for his family beyond anything he'd even dreamed of as a child.
I thought my big deal in life had been KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, when I sold out to the company and become a millionaire. I thought that was, you know, I wasn't ever going to strike anything that big, but I was wrong.
David once thought that if he ever had $10,000 saved, he wouldn't bother to get up in the morning. He was wrong. With money in the bank and time on his hands, Dave Thomas would find out that most of his hard work was still ahead of him.
Discipline creates performance. AIM funds. The idea is discipline. The purpose is performance. The name is AIM.
Night.
Provides no ambient illumination.
It's scary.
Yet objects give off energy in the form of heat.
It would be amazing if you could see what's out there.
DeVille DTS thermal detection system with a head-up display projects images of the road ahead.
Beyond the range of your headlamps.
The all-new DeVille DTS, the world's first car available with night vision. The power of and, the fusion of design and technology. Cadillac.
Nobody in America sells more office products to more businesses than Office Depot.
You can shop our store.
Taking care of business.
Or you can shop our catalog.
Taking care of business.
You can shop online.
Taking care of business. It's all mine. Taking care of business and working overtime. Work out.
Office Depot. Taking care of business.
Capture the spirit of the holidays with Winter Solstice on Ice. Saturday at 9 Eastern, 10 Pacific, only on A&E. A computer, the new wonder drug, your favorite snack, or a light bulb. What would you put in a time capsule set to be opened in 1,000 years? How would you want to be remembered? Look around. Is it your wedding picture, your favorite book, or those old jeans? Which treasures will tell the stories of how we lived, who we loved, and what we overcame? A world premiere event, the Times Capsule. Mondays at 9 Eastern, 10 Pacific on the History Channel.
Discover paradise at petopia.com, the internet pet paradise. Right now, delivery is free on most pet supplies at petopia.com.
A&E's look at Dave Thomas, the fast food genius behind Wendy's, continues.
By the late 1960s, Dave Thomas was a success and a rich one. He'd become a millionaire on his Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises. At age 37, he was a veteran of 25 years of hard work, and it seemed like a good time to take a break. But the late 60s were a time of infinite possibilities, not early retirement. In 1969, the culture was exploding. Vietnam was at full boil. Color TV was the new thing. Woodstock Nation had been convened. Man had just walked on the moon. Everyone was looking up and ahead, and all these people were going to need something to eat. Dave Thomas believed he knew what that was.
I just always loved hamburgers. I loved them. I mean, I just loved, I still do, with mustard, pickle, and onion, and the meat proportions abundant.
Americans have a long and deeply rooted love affair with the hamburger, especially made the old-fashioned way.
Without question, it's our most important food.
The hamburger seems to have come ashore in 1832 in Delmonico's restaurant in New York City. It was a Hamburg steak, raw ground beef, named for the city in northern Germany and demanded by the large numbers of hungry German immigrants who were settling America. Hamburgers started to turn up as a quick snack sold from pushcarts at county fairs. There are many pretenders to the throne of first hamburger king.
In 1900 in New Haven, Connecticut, Louis Lassen grabbed his steak trimmings, molded it together, put it between his own homemade bread, and that became what he says was the first sandwich. There was Akron, Ohio, where Frank Menches served it at a fairground. In 1885, Charlie Negreen also was working at a fairground, and he was serving the cooked steak sandwich.
Drive-in restaurants supplanted the pushcart in the early 1920s, and White Castle took the hamburger national in 1921. They were a nickel apiece and sold from castles, which signified strength and purity. There was still suspicion about what kind of ground meat you were eating when you ate out in those days. By the time Dave Thomas and Colonel Sanders were putting Kentucky Fried Chicken on the map, McDonald's, Burger King, and others were colonizing America with hamburger forts and outposts for a hungry population that was constantly on the move. The classic American hamburger had devolved to two themes, fast and cheap. Burgers were pre-cooked and pre-wrapped, then parked under sun lamps until the next lucky customer came along. In 1969, the 37-year-old Dave had another idea. He was nostalgic for one of the few things that had made him happy as a kid, an old-fashioned hamburger made to his own specifications. But he was having trouble coming up with a name for his hamburger stand.
I had the name Old Fashioned, and then one night I went home and I have 4 daughters and a son, and the little redhead was Melinda Lou. And everybody called her Wenda. Not Wendy, Wenda. I don't know, I just looked at her and said, I'm going to call it Wendy's Old-Fashioned Hamburgers.
When they decided this is what they were going to do, I made her an outfit, fixed her hair.
I remember him putting my hair up in pigtails. And then eventually my mom making a dress and going down to a studio and putting my hair up in pigtails with that stuff that makes your hair stick straight out. And sitting in the studio for a couple hours and smiling until my mouth felt like it was going to fall off.
And Wendy had red hair and freckles. And that's what the logo was taken off of. It was a good old-fashioned image.
At 8 years old, it was very exciting. It was really neat. And then they made this huge hamburger, and I thought that was really cool.
The first Wendy's opened for business in downtown Columbus, Ohio in November of 1969. And everybody came. It was quickly obvious that Dave Thomas had something.
From the very first day when there were people lying down the street, I knew we had something that was going to be different and better.
The basic surprise is when the store opened, there truly were lines. When they put in the first Wendy's there and got it all worked out, I mean, people were coming They said, whoops, we got something here.
Every Wendy's hamburger is made from 100% pure fresh beef and patty daily. Nothing was left to chance in Dave's new place. No detail was too small for his attention. He claimed the square patties were because he didn't like to cut corners. Dave was finally his own boss. He tried to get from other people what he demanded from himself. He never stopped working, and he knew how to do every job better than anyone else. Being his own boss just meant more to worry about at work for Dave. At home, wife Lorraine raised the children, now 4 girls and a boy, without much input from their dad.
Wendy's old-fashioned hamburgers.
And work was a full-time job. Wendy's had taken on a life of its own and started to make a place for itself among the McDonald's and Burger Kings. It pioneered the drive-through window, which increased sales by 50%. In the first 6 years, there were 100 Wendy's. Just 1 year later, there were 500.
He's always 3 deals ahead of everybody else. I mean, he's already finished and understands and transferring that situation to people that need to get the job done, but he's already 2 ahead of them. I mean, he's thinking forward.
Dave Thomas was the Pied Piper of hamburgers.
People were saying, oh, Dave, I hear you've got a new hamburger place. I'm going to come and see it. And they would come and he'd sell them a franchise that afternoon. So he said, you can have, you know, Kentucky, or you can have Idaho, or you can have whatever you want.
Come in and relax in our old-fashioned dining room or try our speedy pickup window service. By 1974, they were getting 500 phone calls a week asking about franchises. But the failure rate for any new restaurant was high. Going national was a sink or swim proposition, and Wendy's was doing a bit of both.
We opened 1 year 500 restaurants, and we really wasn't capable of opening 500 restaurants, but we did it. But it was really important to have them 500 restaurants because that gave us some national recognition that we could go on national TV.
You want a real good hamburger?
Wendy's was opening more stores than McDonald's. In 1975, the company went public, and in 1977, it burst into the national fast food consciousness with a campaign proclaiming hot and juicy hamburgers.
Wendy's hot and juicy hamburgers. Juicy meat, juicy toppings, and lots of napkins.
Dave Thomas never let up. By 1978, there were 1,000 Wendy's. In 3 years, there would be another 1,000. And he never stopped looking for innovations to make his places stand out in the crowd. In 1979, Dave put in salad bars. Everyone agreed Dave Thomas was a nice guy, as he outworked, outthought, and out-hustled the competition. But it could be a bit intimidating.
He did put this fear in you, and he had me in tears many times, and he used to tell people, he said, now don't, you know, she starts crying at the drop of a hat, so don't upset her. But it was just the way he'd like, this isn't right, you know, but darn it, if it was always, he was right.
Watch out, McDonald's.
By now, the battle to sell you a hamburger had become a national economic war, the burger war. The old rules went out the window. It was no longer enough to sing your own praises. You had to knock the competition. But Wendy's couldn't get over the hump. No matter how much Dave huffed and puffed, Wendy's was a solid third in the National Hamburger Sweepstakes. Until one day, an octogenarian lady laid down the law and turned the whole thing around.
Hello? Where's the beef?
Where's the Beef went straight to the Advertising Hall of Fame and put Wendy's solidly on the map. But it grew out of rather mundane circumstances.
As you sit around in these very busy conference rooms and everybody's there with the beard stroking and scratching their head and what are we going to do, we're still talking about hamburger. And, you know, it's a pretty simple product out there that can be overthought. It was simply in response to a formulation change that our competitors' products had undergone, in which they had reduced the amount of beef in their hamburgers. Well, this was a perfect opportunity to bring up this idea of there's more bun than beef.
It's a very big fluffy bun.
Where's the beef?
What had begun as an attempt to get some attention for its hamburgers turned into a national catchphrase that even figured prominently in the 1984 presidential election.
When I hear your new ideas, I'm reminded of that ad. Where's the beef?
Can you see the beef? Can you see the beef? Can we sit this way, please? Can you see the beef? That's a lot of beef, right?
But where's the beef turned out to be too much of a good thing for Wendy's. The deluge of business outstripped Wendy's ability to meet demand. They kept up a brave front, but there were real problems. Stores closed and customers complained. There were bad times ahead, and Dave Thomas would have to ride to the rescue yet again.
Wendy's, old-fashioned hamburger taste. We have the taste that Wendy's tastes.
For the web's best bios, log on to Biography.com.
You've never seen power like this before. The Dirt Devil Vision. It's loaded with power you can see. The Vision is lightweight with swivel casters so it turns on a dime. It easily picks up dirt other vacuums can leave behind. And instead of bags, the Vision vacuums dirt into an easy-to-empty container. The Dirt Devil Vision. Nothing escapes the power of a Dirt Devil.
Intrigue is now the first and only mid-size car with the precision control system. It gives you better control over the unexpected. Intrigue by Oldsmobile. Start something.
Tomorrow on Biography, musician, comedian, actor, lady killer.
He was so completely vulnerable.
Now in the fight for his life, all he has are memories. Dudley Moore on an all-new Biography. Tomorrow at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific on A&E.
You expect high-quality products for your home. You should expect the same quality from those who fix it. Licensed and insured, Carroll's Construction has provided the highest quality windows and siding in the market for over 17 years, like Supreme Windows, Reynolds, and Norandex siding. We back our work with a workmanship factory lifetime warranty, free consultations, insurance work, no problem, and financing is available. Carroll's Construction, quality work you can be proud of. Call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Give yourself a break and avoid the rush. Everything you're shopping for is in one place. Westwood Plaza. Discover over 60 specialized shops, from clothing to crafts, from technology to restaurants. It's all right here. Westwood Plaza. Including a movie theater, discount drug, and specialty shops. All in one place. Westwood Plaza. You'll love the convenience of storefront parking at virtually every shop. It's all right here. Westwood Plaza, 120th and West Center.
You are watching Dave Thomas on Biography.
By the mid-1980s, the hamburger marketplace was crowded and cluttered.
Parts is parts.
Dave Thomas had enjoyed double-digit growth for about as long as he'd been in business. Now, the numbers had turned around and were headed the other way. Wendy's tried hard to recapture some of the magic it had enjoyed with Where's the Beef in a series of smart, irreverent, and relevant commercials.
Step aside.
Step aside.
Step aside.
Please, step aside.
Step aside.
Kindly step aside.
As the Soviet Union fell apart, Wendy's took a cheap shot at the evil empire.
Evening, dear. Very nice.
Wendy's was struggling to find a new identity, but Dave, by now, was insulated from day-to-day management. The Thomases were headquartered on the Intercoastal Waterway in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Dave's focus was on catching up to the fun he'd missed as a kid.
And I didn't really have a childhood as I look back. You know, I never really played sports. I never got to participate in anything like that because I worked. So I did miss out.
Dave discovered golf, which he'd once dismissed as a way for rich people to waste time. He even bought a golf course.
Say cheeseburger.
But while they might have been having fun in Florida, back up in Columbus, the hamburger business had turned mean. A lot of growing pains were catching up to Wendy's.
I don't think anybody was prepared to deal with the enormous success that they had. The needs of the business were outstripping the manpower and the abilities of the individuals and the talents and resources that were in place here. So there was always this kind of rushing to catch up.
Dave Thomas had done so much right for so long, it came as a shock when Wendy started to stumble. Could it be he'd lost his touch?
The stock went from nearly $20 in late 84, 1985, all the way down to about $4 a couple years later. So investors had obviously lost their enthusiasm with the company at that point, too. Okay, let me show you how it's supposed to be done.
Okay.
But Wendy's still had a huge built-in advantage. Of all the people at the top of a major food company, Dave Thomas was the only one who'd stood at a grill and flipped the product.
So you didn't know I knew how to do this, did you?
For him, it was a simple matter of going back to the basics he'd started learning as a 12-year-old in Knoxville.
Well, it's pretty simple. You want to get your money's worth, you want to be treated nice, and it's got to taste good. It's pretty simple.
It might be simple, but it was also tough. Dave had created Wendy's back when everyone was afraid to challenge McDonald's and Burger King, and the market was actually underserved. Now it was overripe and overstocked.
All we used to have to do was open up restaurants, and the people came. We didn't even have any national television at that point. I mean, they just came. Today, it's very much a share battle. It's if one company wins, it's because somebody else is losing. It isn't because the entire market is growing. That really isn't the case anymore. And we got into a situation, back about 86, 87, 88, which were not good times for Wendy's.
Over the course of his life, Dave had been in both winning and losing situations, and he knew full well that winning was a lot better. He was already rich, and he'd been so successful that no one could ever take that away from him. As he looked around for motivation, he discovered it was right in front of him.
Good. Well, my big motivation was, if any time that I had any doubts, you know what I'd do? I'd have a double cheese with mustard, pickle, and onion, and a bowl of chili, and a Frosty. Man, I know we can sell this. It's fantastic.
Once Dave had confirmed his own belief in the Wendy's product, it was just a matter of finding a celebrity spokesman who liked the product as much as he did.
They were talking big bucks for him to have to pay to have a standing star to go through the commercial, just as he's done. So I think that was wasn't hard for him to decide that he wasn't going to pay that kind of money for someone to do something he could do.
Then the Wendy's Brain Trust started to cast about for a gimmick besides a big name that would make their restaurant stand out.
The first bite and the last bite is really important. And you know, that's the reason why you got to have enough condiments on a sandwich.
They decided they'd hammer on quality and started to look for an eye-catching way to do it.
So I said to Dave one day, I said, you know, I think if we're going to make somebody an offer that has to do with value, why don't we tell them that if they don't like the food, they get their money back? I mean, nobody's done that. And I think it's real important that this offer come from you.
My hamburgers are the best in the business, or I wouldn't name them after my daughter. And that's the truth.
The man had this sort of charisma on television.
Wendy's old-fashioned hamburgers. Come on in.
Hi.
Howdy, dude.
If Dave tells me, I believe it. It's a very, 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 very strong trait in a spokesman in advertising. If somebody says it, I'm willing to believe it just because they're saying it. I mean, that's not out there.
Can we have Dave Thomas on the set, please?
And so the great race was on. Dave played the blushing starlet and was coaxed out from the back room where he'd been an anonymous mastermind and into the spotlight.
Oh, Dave, where have you been all my life?
Well, I spent a lot of time in the kitchen.
Dave hadn't been in the kitchen for years, but he was overwhelmingly believable and likable on television.
Bonjour, Dave.
Bonjour.
Now, the question was, is the Dave Thomas on TV the same as the Dave Thomas of real life?
Uh-oh. He's not like that. That's the myth, you know, that he's lighthearted and, you know, real funny.
The question about what's he like in person, and is there some similarities? It's seamless. It really is. It's the same guy.
Some of the humor is what I really believe in. I mean, I don't like gourmet restaurants, and I don't like putting on the airs, and I mean, I'm not too big on that. I mean, I like short sleeve shirts. I like good food and good hamburgers.
Dave was almost 60 years old, rich, and now famous. It seemed like he was finally ready to take it easy. But some of his best work and toughest challenges were waiting for him just around the corner.
Much instructions, and thank you.
Biography's look at Dave Thomas will continue in a moment here on A&E.
Nobody does it like you. He lives on the carpet. You want it to be clean. Hoover Wind Tunnel reaches deep down to pick up more dirt than any other clean air upright or canister. Hoover. Deep down, you want Hoover.
Everyone knows what it's like to be congested, but now there's a new kind of relief. New Afrin No Drip nasal spray. Ordinary sprays drip. Afrin No Drip targets congestion and stays there for fast, powerful relief. New Afrin No Drip.
Do you need a new car? Do you need to see the ocean? Is watching a sunset absolutely necessary? Introducing the all-new, redesigned Avalon, the most spacious, most luxurious sedan we've ever created. Do you need a new car?
You didn't kill this girl.
No. Sunday.
Guy wants him killed.
The vice tightens.
He's a known rapist.
When the hunter becomes the hunted.
It has an angel. It's me, Lazarus.
An A&E original movie presentation.
It was an accident. Shut up!
When the race card is played.
Black guy jumps out, drags her in.
The stakes become too high. Someone's got to drop out of the game. The question is, who's it gonna be?
You don't know what you're getting into. I've got something to tell you.
From the best-selling novel,
I thought you might.
comes a story where death is only the beginning.
You is dead.
Joe Mantegna.
Not a word.
Marcia Gay Harden.
My God.
Robert B. Parker's Small Vices. Sunday at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific on A&E. He got killed, then he got even. In 1996, it was Bill Gates. In 1997, Princess Diana. In 1998, it was Bill Clinton. In 1999, who will be A&E's Biography of the Year? Find out December 13th at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific on A&E.
A lot can change in 28 years. If you had invested $10,000 in American Century's growth fund in 1971, it would be worth a cool $1.3 million today. Our advice? Hang in there, baby. Call 1-888-ACI-FUNDS for your investment professional.
Good morning, students. Whoa. Niedermeyer. Coming, sir. Thank you, Niedermeyer.
We're Roxy.com. We're the guys who used to hang out in the AV room. Now we've got a website that recommends and sells electronics. We'll talk to you online or on the phone and help you buy all sorts of things electronic.
I said thank you, Niedermeyer.
Roxy.com. Electronics. Without the static.
A&E's look at Dave Thomas, the fast food genius behind Wendy's, continues.
Dave Thomas was out of the backroom shadows forever by the time the 1990s rolled around. In his late 50s, he'd become a poster boy for a tough start in life.
A high school dropout at the age of 15, who over the years since then has accumulated 10 honorary degrees from places like Duke, Baylor, Clemson, has spoken at the Harvard Business School. Please welcome Dave Thomas!
But Dave kept his day job as Wendy's front man. In that role, he had become a force of nature.
Our hamburgers are the best in the business, or I wouldn't name the place after my daughter.
In 1992, Wendy's opened its 4,000th store. Dave was a long way from day-to-day management chores, but he was still very much the company cheerleader.
I think we can build Wendy's into the biggest, and what Jim's, we're the best now, but we could also be the biggest.
He was now senior chairman, a figurehead in his own company, but he kept a sharp eye on the bottom line.
You could expect, inside a 5-minute conversation with Dave, to have the question, what are you doing for sales? It's very clear what was always on his mind. And you learn quickly, you better have an answer.
And Dave did not let his success obscure his own background, that he had been adopted. He made adoption the main theme in his life and gave his time and money for the cause. In 1990, the Bush White House named him national spokesman. Dave Thomas was still a devout capitalist and Wendy's second largest shareholder, but adoption was the new mountain he wanted to climb.
Hi, I'm Dave Thomas. I'm adopted, so I know the love adoption brings to both the child and family. Think about adopting a special child.
He established his personal foundation to further and facilitate adoption in 1992, and he donated the proceeds from 2 books to the cause. He was slowly chipping away at things that had haunted him from his childhood.
There's 2 things in my life I never really wanted anybody to know about. Was being adopted, well, maybe 3 things. Born out of wedlock, being adopted, and quitting school. And I had nothing to do with the first 2. You know, born out of wedlock or being adopted. But quitting school I did. That was one of the most stupid mistakes I made. Some people say that I have everything I could ever need, but all my life, I regretted quitting high school.
Dave had come around on education, but he was still just paying lip service until a high school student challenged him to put up or shut up during a motivational speech about the value of education.
So I decided to study for the GED test. It wasn't easy.
Dave got a tutor and studied high school courses. Then he took an exam and passed it.
It's never too late. Get your GED diploma and finish what you started.
He finally took it and he passed it. And I read that test. And if I had to take that thing today, I don't think I could make it.
In 1993, he was awarded his general equivalency diploma.
I now declare you an honorary graduate of Coconut Creek High School and a recipient of the General Equivalency Diploma. Congratulations.
If I can do it, you can do it. I mean, this is the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. You can do or be anything you want to.
Dave's classmates voted him most likely to succeed, and Dave and Lorraine were king and queen of the high school prom. Wendy's turned 25 in 1994. Dave's little hamburger stand was now 4,400 strong in 38 countries. Dave helped guide Wendy's back into more health-conscious offerings. But Wendy's founder looked like a man who stayed very close to the original product, hamburgers. Dave had everything, but was concerned about his appearance.
I said, is there anything in your life that you don't have that you wished you had? I mean, you could buy anything you really wanted. And what he told me just floored me, that his greatest desire, he said, would be to lose 40 pounds.
Dave's concerns about his weight were well-founded. On a Saturday night in 1996, disaster struck. He suffered a massive heart attack.
He woke me up and told me he couldn't breathe and just collapsed. I didn't even hesitate. We just called 911. And the doctor said if he'd been anyplace else, it would have been a whole different ballgame. He just happened to be home. We just happened to have good doctors. And we were only like 5 minutes from a hospital.
Dave nearly died, but fought his way through it.
God threw him back because he had more to do. He didn't want him yet. That's what it's all about. So, he's still here with us.
Dave went through a remarkably short convalescence.
When I had an emergency, my family called 911.
And was back making his 515th commercial the next year.
Know when to call. I'm an old-fashioned guy.
But the old Dave gave way to a trimmer model by at least 40 pounds. For a man once described as a steer in a short-sleeved shirt, it was like a wish come true. Dave didn't turn his back on the red meat that had made him a fortune. He just learned to love it less.
Believe it or not, I have more red meat today than I did before my heart attack. But it's moderation.
And Dave Thomas still had more work to do. Hillary Clinton brought him back to the White House.
Businesses can make it easier for their employees to adopt a child,
And I want to single out Dave Thomas of Wendy's, who has led the way in showing all of us how that can be done.
Dave was back to celebrate passage of legislation to make it easier to adopt children. And he started to gather support for an adoption stamp. And now, nearly 7 decades after making such a rough start in life, the man who never had time for his own childhood takes the time to smell the flowers.
Great swing.
He watches over more than 5,000 Wendy's in 32 countries and more than a dozen grandchildren.
People put him on a pedestal and they think he knows everything. He's not. He's just a person. He's had a tough life. He's made the best of it. He doesn't complain about it.
He's, I guess, living proof of the American dream, the free enterprise system, and all that stuff wrapped up into there's only in America can this happen.
And Dave Thomas is still at work on his next great idea.
Okay, thanks, Gov. Bye.
That next great idea may already have arrived. At least Dave Thomas hopes so. If you've guessed internet, you're right. But it's not burgers he's selling online, it's books. This past summer, Dave and his partners launched ecampus.com, where college students can order textbooks over the internet. The man who got his high school diploma at 60 is betting there's money to be made in education. Says Dave, it could be a bigger idea than Wendy's. Tomorrow on Biography, Dudley Moore. His talents always outsized his body, a star with a rare combination of comic timing and musical genius. Right now, he's fighting for his life. Dudley Moore, Thursday. Until tomorrow, for Biography, I'm Harry Smith. Thanks for watching.
Every year, people buy 20 million Walgreens brand batteries. They purchase 6 million rolls of Walgreens film. Pick up 1 million spools of Walgreens dental floss. And go through 2 million Walgreens shaving products. Maybe that's why Walgreens aspirin is so popular. Walgreens, the brand America trusts.
Going in a straight line is one issue, and most people, when they think of speed and power plants, think of... The fact is, you're going fast and slow, and you're turning in the process of doing it. The new Ultima has been redesigned with that in mind. We refined the suspension. We reduced the body roll. We goosed the engine. Technically speaking, we gave the car some...
On the next investigative reports, it's LA detectives in an undercover sting to break a thievish ring.
If you're gonna steal, you can come knocking on your door any day.
Then a fight over a beer comes to a deadly head.
Felix walks up to him and...
Join host Bill Curtis for an all-new investigative reports LA detectives. Next on A&E.
Is your charge...
Good afternoon. Konnichiwa.
From Bravo, the Film and Arts Network, Gerard Depardieu in his first role for television, The Count of Monte Cristo. A Bravo original production, a miniseries event told in passion's true language. Gerard Depardieu is The Count of Monte Cristo. Concludes tomorrow night at 7, only on Bravo.
A&E Home Video proudly presents the biography you've just seen for $14.95 plus shipping and handling. To order, call 1-800-423-1212 or visit our online store at biography.com.
Now, robbers on the runway. LA detectives join an all-new investigative reports next on A&E. For the web's best bios, log on to